Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the incredible 250-year journey of a financial institution that, well, if you've ever walked down a British high street, is probably deeply familiar to you. We're going to unpack exactly how a tiny, highly localized operation managed to survive centuries of massive economic shifts, technological revolutions, and global financial crises, only to emerge as the modern banking empire we know today.
Right, let's kick things off with a bit of a brain teaser. If you were going to start a major bank today, you'd probably look for, a team of seasoned Wall Street or City of London financiers, right? That just makes sense. But what do a button maker and an iron producer have in common? Seriously, take a second to think about what kind of enterprise two guys with those specific trades might actually start together.
Well, the answer is pretty incredible. Together, they founded what would eventually become the absolute biggest retail bank in the UK, Lloyds. It's a massive contrast when you really stop and think about it. I mean, how exactly does a business pivot from making buttons and iron to holding the life savings of millions of people? To understand that, we've got to go back in time.
Chapter 1. A Button Maker's Bank.
Picture this. It's 1765 in Birmingham. The Industrial Revolution is just starting to take off, and local businesses are absolutely desperate for reliable capital and a safe place to store their cash. Now, instead of your traditional bank founders, those wealthy London elites, you have local Birmingham tradesmen stepping up. On June 3rd, 1765, two very established local businessmen decided to solve their city's liquidity problem. Sampson Lloyd II was an iron producer, and John Taylor was a maker of buttons and japanned ware. So they weren't just random guys spotting a gap in the market, they were highly successful industrialists who knew exactly what their booming local economy needed. They pooled their money, pooled their experience, and each founder, along with a son, put in £2,000. And just like that, they launched Taylors and Lloyds. It was simply Birmingham's first bank. But here's the catch. Why did people actually trust them? Because at the end of the day, trust is the absolute currency of banking. The crucial advantage they had was their background. See, Sampson Lloyd came from a Quaker family. They had fled Wales generations earlier to escape religious persecution, settled in Birmingham, and built a rock-solid name in the iron trade. And in the Wild West of early British banks, this Quaker background was a huge deal. Quaker communities were widely known for their scrupulous honesty and really strict financial discipline. That community reputation made them the obvious natural candidates to hold other people's money. They were basically lending to the exact same local tradespeople they had worked alongside for years. And it worked. Within a decade, they had hundreds of local businesses on their books. Chapter 2. A Century in One Room. So, knowing all that success, you might expect this newly established bank to start spreading across the country like wildfire. But the history of Lloyds features one of the most surprising statistical quirks in corporate history: 100. For nearly 100 years, Taylors and Lloyds operated out of a single office, literally just one. Located on Dale End in central Birmingham, this bank served its manufacturers and merchants directly from that exact spot for a full century. They didn't open a single additional branch until 1864. For a bank that is famous today for being on virtually every high street, a century in one room is just an incredible reality to wrap your head around. But once they finally decided to expand, they didn't just walk, they sprinted. In 1865, literally a year after opening that second branch, the business converted into a limited company. And over the following decades, they went on an absolute tear, absorbing roughly 200 smaller regional banks. Talk about a growth spurt. They completely transformed from a single shop in Birmingham into a vast national institution. By the 1880s, they made the inevitable leap that every ambitious regional bank eventually made. They moved to London, the absolute epicenter of British finance. Chapter 3. The Black Horse Mystery. Okay, so with their move to London and this massive new national presence came a very famous visual element. If you picture Lloyds Bank today, you instantly picture the iconic black horse. You'd probably assume that symbol dates right back to John Taylor and Sampson Lloyd in 1765, right? Well, it doesn't. The bank's original symbol was actually a beehive, which, to be fair, is a very fitting nod to the industriousness of those early Birmingham manufacturers. The black horse didn't even belong to them originally. So where on earth did it come from? The horse actually entered the Lloyds picture in 1884. They inherited it from one of the many banks they acquired during that massive wave of 19th century consolidation. But the symbol itself traces back way further than that, all the way to 1677. It was originally used as a physical sign for a goldsmith shop hanging on Lombard Street in London. Remember, this was an era before street numbers even existed. businesses had to use highly decorative, memorable signs just so customers could physically locate them on the street. So Lloyds inherited this ancient street sign and ultimately turned it into the iconic global logo we know today.
Chapter 4. Building the Modern Megabank.
All right, let's fast forward about a century. The Lloyds we recognize right now was forged not just through that 19th century growth, but through some highly aggressive and complex corporate maneuvers in our modern era. The modern Lloyds Bank is really the product of a long chain of massive mergers and splits. For instance, in 1995, Lloyds merged with the Trustees Savings Bank, or TSB. TSB has an amazing history of its own, founded in 1810 by a Scottish minister who just wanted to help working people save their money. That merger created the Lloyds TSB Group. Then came 2009 when they took over the struggling HBOS Group, which stood for Halifax Bank of Scotland. And finally, in 2013, the whole structure shifted again as Lloyds and TSB were separated back into two distinct banks, with TSB spinning off as its own independent brand. Now, I want to pause on that 2009 event for a second, because the HBOS takeover is a huge chapter in recent financial history. This acquisition occurred right at the absolute height of the global financial crisis. It was a major deal at the time, happening partly under the direct encouragement of the UK government, who were desperately trying to stabilize the banking sector. The result of this takeover was the instant creation of the largest retail bank in the UK. But because of the unprecedented nature of the crisis and the financial interventions required to make it happen, it also left the UK taxpayer as a major shareholder in the bank for years afterward. It was an incredibly turbulent time that fundamentally reshaped the scale and structure of the institution.
Chapter 5. A Legacy of Firsts.
Through all these mergers, acquisitions, and centuries of history, Lloyds has cemented its importance, not just through sheer size, but through significant historical and technological milestones. For example, Lloyds installed the UK's very first real-time online ATM. That was an absolute landmark moment for the everyday banking convenience that we completely take for granted today. But alongside pushing technological boundaries, they've also become the custodians of some incredible financial heritage. Through their acquisitions, they absorbed and preserved some of the oldest financial names in the country. This includes the Bank of Scotland, founded way back in 1695, and Scottish Widows, founded in 1815. Both of these historic institutions now sit directly under the modern Lloyds Banking Group umbrella. Which brings us to the institution as it stands today. It is a true financial giant. Lloyds Banking Group is officially one of the big four UK banks. It serves millions of retail and business customers across England, Wales, and Scotland through all its various heritage brands like Halifax and Bank of Scotland. And of course, its headquarters sit right in London, acting as a massive pillar of the global financial establishment. When you look at those massive modern metrics, it's just wild to think back to how this all started. They're a very long way, both literally and figuratively, from that single-room office on Dale End. From two Birmingham tradesmen just trying their hand at banking to help out their local community, through 100 years in one single room, inheriting a 17th century goldsmith sign, navigating the 2009 financial crisis, to becoming the absolute giant they are today. It really begs the question, what will the next 250 years look like for Lloyds? Thank you for joining me for this explainer. I hope this journey has given you a whole new perspective on a brand you probably walk past every single day.